Today, it's my privilege and opportunity to sit down with Todd Lesley, who, Todd, I got to tell you, you're a guy that I've met a few times. I think maybe you even attended my Sunday school class one time, but
Hmm.
I really don't know that we've ever really had a conversation. I know that I'm a big fan of your video devotions. You tell some really great stories.
Well,
And
thank
so
you.
I'm very excited about the opportunity to learn a little bit more about you and your faith journey today. And so let me just say thanks for being willing to share with us.
Yep. And like I was telling you before we started here, thank you for doing this. I think it's a great way to help all of us get to know one another better when we get, to knowing we know our Sunday school class really well, but sometimes we don't get to know other folks. And this is a great way to help us get to know folks better, like I said. If you want me to just start in here, and I'll start a little bit about where I was or where I was born, and talk a little bit about my faith journey, I'll be glad to do that. I was
Yeah,
born I was born in
yeah.
Atlanta, Georgia, and was baptized at College Park Presbyterian as an infant. And I was going to tell you, in attendance at that day when I was baptized was the head football coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. He would later go on to be the head football coach, Bill Curry. Now, I got baptized that day, but I did not get any physical skills that enabled me to go on to be a great football player. So Bill didn't do anything for me while he was there, but my mom always talks about the fact that Bill Curry was there. He played for the Green Bay Packers and went on to coach the Alabama Crimson Tide. But we then moved to Cleveland, Mississippi, and where I went to kindergarten and first grade. And dad was actually asked to move to Chicago with the company he was working for, Baxter Labs. And mom's from Louisiana, dad's from South Carolina. Chicago just wasn't a real draw for them.
Wow.
So dad put some feelers out, and he landed at Burlington Industries, where he had a successful 30-year career. I actually have a Wall Street Journal with his name on it over here, when he was appointed to be on the board of directors, and he did very, very well for himself there. But that's where we landed, and that's what I consider my hometown, which is Jamestown, North Carolina. And we became charter members of Jamestown Presbyterian Church in the late 60s there. And I would, still call Jamestown Presbyterian my hometown church. We just recently had our 50th anniversary celebration, and I was very involved in the youth group there. Went through the ordination class that they had for kids in the middle school level. But the one person I want to talk about, there was something about early influences, and talk about those folks. Our first pastor there was a real influence on my parents, I'm sure. And then I think they kind of, followed his lead, and then they became such a great influence for me. But if you can imagine a pastor at the age of 40 getting cancer in his jaw and not being able to speak later on in his career, I mean, what a really tough blow it was for Mac Faust. But to watch him battle through that adversity, and how he did it was, one day, I mean, he was so depressed about it. His wife came in and handed him a set of watercolors just to see if he wanted to, doodle a little bit. Mac ended up becoming a very accomplished artist. You can find his work on postcards, T-shirts. You can find it in offices, homes. I got a painting somewhere around here that he did. And instead of letting that cancer get him down, he for 35 years, he not only was a great pastor, but he was a guy that could speak through his artwork. And I do remember that I had written down something on the day that he died, the Greensboro News and Record. And if you want to look up Mac Faust, you can learn it. It's Macfoust. The Greensboro News and Record said when he died that Jamestown lost an artist whose life was a picture that inspired many. And I thought that was a very well done headline.
What a nice tribute.
Yeah. But, continuing on my faith journey, I get into college, and I remember I had to go to Richmond to a class one time, and they asked me to draw a picture of my faith journey instead of talking about it.
Uh-huh.
And from 1979 to say the mid 90s, I just drew a black hole. That's all I could draw. I really got disconnected from the church. Sure, when I went home, had no problem going back and seeing Jamestown Presbyterian Church, but was not really finding myself connecting anywhere during that time. Luann and I got married, and we ended up landing at Wake Forest Presbyterian Church. And that's kind of where my faith journey kind of got kicked back in gear there. I've just talked to John Hartman, who was a pastor there, and I just talked to him this morning, and somebody that I grew very close to, and I know Bill Slater knows him very well, and I really started finding my place there. And I think what I'll do is I won't get into it right now, because a lot of what I want to share with you, when you get into other questions, will probably take us back to Wake Forest Presbyterian. But we were there. Luann and I had no problem getting up in the morning, going to church. We were always enthusiastic. I was really putting in a lot of time at the church. I know a lot of folks at Wake Forest Baptist were there when we were there. So they know, about my involvement there. But we've noticed that it was my daughter that wasn't connecting there, and we were having to drag her to Wake Forest Presbyterian for whatever reason. So we felt like we needed to change that. And so we started looking for another church, and we landed at Greystone Baptist Church over here in Raleigh, not too far from where I live. And it was a really good move for us, because my daughter did find her place there. I just happened to watch a video of her playing a song that she wrote for a little festival they had there at the church. And I was just so moved by it. And I knew that day when I saw her doing that and all the enthusiasm surrounding her, that we had made the right move, a tough move, but we'd made the right move. And we told ourselves we can always go back to Wake Forest Pres when Sarah Gray goes back to college. But she's happy. Luann and I found our place there, in that we started back up the young adults class, which had kind of floundered at that church on a number of occasions. But Luann and I found a core group of couples, the Kleinhans, the Brauners, and some other couples that, we started it up again. It took a long time to start drawing young adults back to the class, but we just held in there, and we stuck with it. And by the time we left, they had already knocked out a wall, because the class had gotten so big. Wow. And that was probably my proudest accomplishment there at Greystone. But things changed, and Sarah Gray moved on to college, and we decided, I would like to go back to Wake Forest Presbyterian. I have so many connections there, but kind of like, I lived in Jamestown my elementary school years. I lived in Burlington my middle school years, and then we went back to Jamestown. I thought everything was going to be all rosy when I went back to Jamestown. I thought everything was going to be all rosy when I went back to Wake Forest Presbyterian. It just wasn't the same. John wasn't there, and we just didn't feel like it was the right call to make. So we continued our search, and that's how we landed at Wake Forest Baptist Church. Is we just felt felt a calling to come back, or to come to Wake Forest Baptist Church, and we've been real happy with that decision. And that's how we landed there.
Wow. Well, go back a little bit and fill in a couple of questions. You mentioned that you were in Jamestown through your high school years.
Yeah, it was interesting. So we moved to Jamestown in 1968. Dad was with the Research and Development Division of Burlington Industries. He then swapped jobs with a guy in Burlington at their transportation division. So we moved to Burlington, and it just happened to be all of my middle school years, except for the last quarter of ninth grade. And then he got transferred to Ashboro, and we looked at moving to Ashboro, but we said, and you'll find out probably, when I talk a little bit more, you'll find out why we ended up moving back to Jamestown. But we just decided we could move back to Jamestown, and he could commute to Ashboro. And that saved us a move, because he then got promoted to the corporate office, where he landed for the remainder of his career in Greensboro, which is right next to Jamestown. So that actually saved us a couple of moves by just going back to Jamestown.
So what was Todd Lindsay known for in high school?
In high school, I wasn't really an outgoing guy. I was pretty. I did well in school. I didn't set the world on far as grades go. I wasn't, but I could be. It depended on which group I was with. I could be the class clown, but it kind of depending on which group I was with. I was a class clown. I enjoyed playing a lot of basketball and golf, and just did not date girls. I probably went on 5 dates my entire high school career, and I probably only wanted to go on 2 of those, to be honest with you. I was very, very shy in that regard, but I had a lot of good friends. As a matter of fact, I carpooled with 4 guys. We actually all got together at Bill's Pizza just 2 weekends ago and had a little small reunion of our own. And we all remembered the cars that we drove in our carpool and had a good conversation. But I I can't say anything but good things about the friendships I had. But
Yeah.
like I said, I wasn't a class president or anything like that. I was just a regular old run of the mill Joe there at school.
Now, now you left there, you left Jamestown in high school and went off to college.
Yep, NC State.
Okay. And what did you study there?
I studied business
Okay.
management at NC State. I can't say I lost a lot of focus at school, and I was going to touch on that a little bit. That black hole there. That I had a great time at NC State, but I think I had too much fun at NC State. If you know what I mean. And we had to. Dad and I had to have a real heart-to-heart talk after I graduated about my ambitions and all that, and I'll touch on that. But that's where I ended up going to school. I'd applied at Elon, Western Carolina, and NC State, but when I got the NC State acceptance, I didn't even bother talking to the other schools. I was so thrilled.
Yeah.
Accepted there.
So after school, what happened? I guess, got into the career.
Yeah, and let me just go ahead and I'll go ahead and share that with you. It was again, I was not an ambitious person at that time. I was living at home with my family. I had a younger brother who's 16 years younger than me, and I found myself out there playing wiffle ball a lot with him that summer. And my dad would come home and he'd be scratching his head and say, "What's Todd Lesley going to be doing about a job here? He's play wiffle ball for the rest of his life." And we had a really difficult conversation that I needed to have. My dad was all about tough love, and it was not pretty. And I remember my mom coming to me and telling me that Dad felt like he had failed as a dad that day. And I know my dad probably would not be happy that my mom told me that, but I needed to hear that. And within 2 weeks, I landed a job at ITT Commercial Finance. And I will tell you, ITT doesn't know how motivated an employee they had hired when they hired me, because all I could hear ringing in my ear was that my dad felt like he was a failure. And I've been in the commercial finance industry for 39 years now. And I've got some examples of where I think I turned the corner with my dad that I'll share with you. But one of those was, I started my own company February 2nd of 2002, and just this past February we celebrated our 20th anniversary, being Bedford Financial, and it's just been Luann and I, and it was a real leap of faith for me. But I know Dad's somewhere smiling about that, and I don't have to worry about him feeling like a failure anymore. Believe me. So,
wow, that's great. That is great. Now, where did you and Luann meet? Where did she come into the picture?
Okay, Luann and I met at the 42nd Street Oyster Bar. I had a condo downtown, and my roommate happened to have an acquaintance that happened to be Luann's suite mate in college. So there was a big group that met at the 42nd Street Oyster Bar. Luann was 35 and she hadn't been married. And I always joked with her that she just said, "The next guy that walks through that door at 42nd Street Oyster Bar, I'm going to marry him." And that happened to be me. But anyway, we met there, and we dated for a while. I was actually, we didn't start dating because I was actually still dating a girl in Virginia Beach at the time. But when I finally broke that off, I knew that she was the one I wanted to go out with next, and we started from there. So we met in 1991. We got married in 1993, and I will tip my hat to Luann and say that when she met me, I was actually in between jobs, and it was a year and a half before I actually landed a full-time job. And that says a lot about her. I'm sure all of her friends were asking, "What does Todd do for a living?" And to have to tell them he doesn't do anything right now, it's not easy to do. But I've always I've been flattered by the fact that she hung in there with me, and she always told me she believed in me, and my father-in-law believed in me. I never had any issues with my in-laws as far as that goes. And right before we got married, I got a job at Bombardier Capital, and they were nice enough to give me the first week off of work for my honeymoon, and I haven't been unemployed since. So it's been good.
That's awesome. Now, in one daughter, is that right?
That's it. Yeah, we had actually given up. We had tried, in 2.5 years we just threw in the towel, and I think when we gave up, that's when it happened. We quit, putting pressure on ourselves, and so Sarah Gray was born shortly before Luann turned 40, and she's our one daughter, and we just elected to to keep it at one daughter and one child. And she is currently at the University of Chicago getting her PhD in English literature. And
Wow.
she is, needless to say, we're very, very proud of her. She's done very, very well in school. And a lot of people thought I wanted a son as a child. And I'll tell them, Sarah Gray was every bit a daughter and every bit a son to me. I mean, we played so much basketball together. It was crazy. She went on to be a state free throw shooting champion. So anything I needed in a son, I got out of Sarah Gray and then some. And I've always told her if I had to draw a blueprint for a child, she exceeded that blueprint by a long shot. And I'm always very, very proud of her. Hopefully you'll get to meet her sometime.
That's awesome. That is awesome. As we're talking about the past a little bit here, anything else you want to share related to, particularly in your faith journey, any other key events that happened in the past, things that you think might be significant that people would want to know about?
Yeah, talking about Wake Forest Presbyterian, I was looking for ways to get involved there. And I remember I went to see the sign-up sheets for the Sunday school classes, and I noticed nobody was signing up for the senior high Sunday school class. Everybody was signing up for all the other classes, but nobody was touching that one. And I don't know, it's not like I was going to be some, brilliant theological, teacher that would come into the class, but my heart said, I had a good time during my senior high years at church. And I felt really bad for those kids that they didn't have somebody signing up for them. So I signed up for it, and I just took a big chance and signed up for it. And first couple of classes I taught, I had sweat pouring from my forehead. There were kids in that class. There were kids in that class that had gone on to be pastors, and there's a real strong likelihood that they had more biblical knowledge than I had, even when I was the teacher. But I kind of figured out that what I can do here is by teaching, I can learn a lot more by teaching than I can by just being a student in a class. And I embraced it. And yeah, it was challenging. And there were some questions thrown at me that just really shocked me. I know I was telling my Sunday school class that I was teaching the other day that, we were going through the Old Testament story of Noah, and there's some really harsh things going on in that story. And, one of the kids looked at me and said, he thought God was a punk. And I was like, wow, I didn't know where that one was coming from. And, I always made an effort to kind of digest things. And if there was something I couldn't answer that day or respond to, I'd come back the next week and have a response to. But I never quite felt I was worthy of being in that class at times until something happened that really, really, really affected me. We had a parent coming into the class, and basically I didn't know why he was coming into the class. He was participating and he was acting like one of the kids, but essentially he was coming in and he was spying on me. He wanted to know what I was teaching his daughter, and he was concerned about what I might be teaching his daughter. He didn't know. He just wanted to come in and kind of check things out. I thought, as naive as I was, that maybe this was a church's audit policy, or something they have, that they just want somebody to come in and make sure that we're doing the right thing here. So I didn't think anything of it, but it infuriated the kids in the class. And little did I know, they went to the leadership of the church and they complained about it. I came back into the Sunday school the next week. There was an apology letter from this guy up on the bulletin board there. And I was like, wow, they went and stood up for me. And I was really, really overwhelmed by that. And I thought, well, maybe I have arrived, and maybe I do belong here. And maybe these kids here appreciate what I'm doing. And the other thing that happened, though, was I was at home. I got a knock on my door. Some of these things choke me up, so hang in there with me.
Yeah.
I got a knock on the door, and it was one of those kids, and it was one of the elders. And he had gone to the church, and they said, I think Todd Lesley should be an elder of the church. And there I was thinking, I was having that imposter syndrome that I'm not sure I really belong here teaching this class. And look what it did for me,
Wow.
And so I ended up becoming an elder at the church, and served as membership chair. And is all, because of that leap of faith I took teaching those kids that kind of ignited that journey for me. And it really meant a lot to me. So.
Well, I'm glad to see too that you've continued that, because I can remember first time I saw you do a children's sermon, do a children's teaching in front of the church, I thought, wow, this guy's really got a talent for that.
Hmm.
And then I think I ran into you sometime, and I think I indicated you ought to consider teaching an adult class. I think I told you one time, and I'm glad to see that you're doing that some too. And
Yeah, well, I've taken baby steps. I mean, I've done children's sermons all the way back to my youth days at Jamestown Presbyterian. Then I graduated to the high school level, and now I'm, up here teaching the adults as a substitute. I'll never be as good as Christy Hill. I'll tell you, she is just a top-notch teacher. So I feel challenged when I teach that class because to try, I make sure I'm as good as Christy is at teaching. I'll never be as good as she is, but I don't want to let the class down because I know they're blessed to have her as a teacher.
well, I'm on the mailing list for your class, and so anytime you've taught, I usually get the emails that you send out with the follow-up stories from what you taught about, which I always find kind of fascinating. Seems
Yeah,
like you always have some great examples and illustrations that you use. So
I think the
yeah,
one I enjoyed the most was it really got to me was I was talking about Bill Snyder, the coach of the Kansas State
right.
football team, in Zechariah, and then I wrote Coach Snyder to let him know he's now the ex-football coach, and he was nice enough to send me a note and wrote a note to the class, and that meant a lot to me. So
Nice.
yeah, I appreciate you saying that though.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. That was pretty awesome.
But I will tell you, as far as Wake Forest Presbyterian goes, another moment that kind of, when I was talking about the kids, wanting to nominate me as an elder, that moment was another moment where I kind of came full circle with my dad after hearing him say he felt like a failure. That ordination service is probably one of the top 5 moments in my life.
Hmm.
In that, we had the laying of hands. I was up there at the front, kneeling with my head down, and the elders came up and they put their hands on me. There was one hand that was just like gripping my shoulder, and I didn't know who it was, but I thought it was Don or George, one of the elders at our church. And when when the prayer was over with and I could look back and I was on my knees, I'm looking up at my dad. Little did I
Uh-huh.
know that it was any ordained elder in the Presbyterian church could come up there and lay their hands. I thought it was only the church members that were ordained elders.
Right.
So I think I cried that whole day thinking about that moment with my dad. And, it was just probably right up there, top 2 or 3 moments in my life, just looking up at him and just knowing that, we'd come along. We always had a great relationship, but, I just worked so hard to try to repair whatever damage I'd done during my college years. And I felt like I was on my way there. So,
Yeah. Now, how long have you and Lou Ann been at Wake Forest Baptist Church?
I want to say we've been at Wake Forest Baptist Church. I want to say 6 years.
6 years.
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
was it about Wake Forest Baptist Church that led you and Lou Ann to choose that to be your church home?
Well, I'm not going to lie. I mean, we think Bill Slater's sermons are just awesome. We had, some connections already that we knew at the church. We just, you just feel a calling whenever you're visiting a church, and you get that feeling. We had that when we left Wake Forest Presbyterian to go to Greystone. A difficult decision, but I just remember getting in the car with my daughter after visiting Greystone and looking at her and saying, this one, feels right. It's you got a very welcoming church. I think the resources you provide with the devotionals, things that you're doing, it's just, there's just a lot to offer. I was familiar with the church somewhat because we used to play Wake Forest Baptist in softball and in
Okay.
basketball when I was at Wake
Right.
Forest Presbyterian. So I had gotten to know some of the members during those days. So, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Now, since you've come to Wake Forest Baptist Church, I know that you've been involved in doing devotionals, children's sermons. You do some of the adult teaching. Anything else that you've been involved in that maybe I don't know about that you have found to be significant?
Well, I'm going to give you an honest answer here. And that answer is really, I have not been as involved as I'd like to be. I come from a background where at the last 2 churches, I was very, very involved. And I think I think I was a little bit shaken by the last thing I got involved in at the prior church. I'm not pointing the finger at the church, but I got involved in the personnel committee there at the church.
Mm.
And that was, just somebody just asked me to be involved in it. That was fine. But then I got asked to be the personnel chair a couple of years later. And when I was looking around the room at the candidates that could have been the personnel chair, there were people that had a personnel background that surely needed to be chairing that personnel committee, not me, who has a financial background. Yes, my dad was a personnel executive. He would be great, but I got into something that I regretted, and things kind of went south with some of the some things at church kind of went south from prior to me being the personnel chair that I got involved in, and there was a little bit of ugliness that happened, and I found myself coming to church worrying more about who's going to attack me about personnel committee issues and not being able to focus on worshiping,
Right.
And I think we need to be mindful of that when we have people just volunteering and serving at the church, that's exactly what they're doing, but we need to let them worship when they come to church on Sunday morning. And it got to the point where I was scared to death to go into church because somebody's going to be waving something in my face or pointing out something I did wrong, or something we need to be doing. And it just got to be nerve-wracking for me. And I swore that I will never get involved or never say yes to something that I don't feel in my heart is the right thing to do. The only reason I was personnel chair was because I was the only one courageous enough to say yes while all the others said no. And when you're talking about personnel matters, you may need to outsource those kind of things. Let some professionals handle that stuff rather than somebody that knows absolutely nothing about what they're doing at times, and that's just being brutally honest, So I need to, I think if the church could pray for me and help me get over that issue that I had and that time that I had, and it helped me get the courage to come back and serve on a committee. I'm getting there. I'll be there. COVID didn't help any, obviously,
Sure.
with all this being gone, but I really need to get past that issue that I had. And I hope you don't mind me sharing that with you.
No, in fact, quite the opposite. I think it's a great point to make. And I think that, it's a good reminder to us about showing grace to people who are in leadership roles in church administration. It is a volunteer organization. People, do it out of a sense of call. And we need to show them some grace and our staff as well. Think about our staff as well, because again, they need to be able to find a place to worship as well. And so I think it's a great reminder, about just showing grace to people in leadership for sure.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about one of the questions I always like to ask people about is a little bit about do you have any favorite or any current spiritual practices or routines or things that you do that really help you kind of stay synced up with God?
Mm-hmm. Well, my wife often asks me, why do I get up at 5 a.m. in the morning to go flounder fishing? And oftentimes I'll send her a picture of the sunrise that's coming up. But I'll send it to her after 8 o'clock. I don't want to wake her up with it or anything. But, I do try to find moments and places where I can actually exhibit patience. And fishing is one of those things for me. I just appreciate the surroundings, and I do get in touch with God in that moment. And I just noticed that no matter what happens in those 3 or 4 hours that I'm out there, if I catch a fish or not, I don't care. And it just nothing has to happen. And there's a certain amount of calm that occurs in those particular moments. And that would be the number one thing I'd say that I've discovered here that's been really good for me as a heart patient. That's a good thing to have. You need to have those calming moments and in those moments to just thank God for all that He's done for me, because God's been so great to me. I mean, my career path is anything but a great career path. It's a career path that I would tell people do not follow, because one of the things that happened in my career was that I was National Sales Manager of the Year with this company, and I was going to Atlanta, Georgia with them. My family's looking at me to be the provider, and this company wanted me to go to Atlanta, Georgia, and I was on top of the world. And I said, I'm going. And unfortunately, Luann and my daughter weren't too happy about that. It was going to pull them away from their family. I got all that. And I did get a job offer that was going to pay me pretty handsomely to stay here in Raleigh, but it wasn't really in my heart the job that I wanted, but I knew it would make my family happy. Those kind of decisions shouldn't be made that way. Probably, any career advisor would probably tell you not to make decisions like that. That's the decision I made. How good was God to me on that decision? Well, when I resigned from the company where I've just been heralded as the sales manager of the year, that day I resigned, they became a nightmare on Wall Street. Bogus accounting, all this fraudulent stuff going on there. And I'm like, Lord, you've saved me. I could be in Atlanta, Georgia with this company, and you saved me. All that bitterness I had about having to, leave this company and go with another, it went away. And I had 4.5 years where I worked for this company. I can't say I was really happy with them, but at least I wasn't in Atlanta, Georgia with this other company. And in 4.5 years, I came up with this idea to start my own company. And that's how Bedford Financial came to be. So those kind of things, when I'm out fishing and all, I just think back on and I just give thanks to God, because I could have been in a lot worse place than I ended up being. And I was very, very fortunate. And I give all praise to God for just giving me that pathway that he gave me.
Yeah. Gosh, it's so important that we take that time to be settled and to reflect on, our past and how God does show us something better than we thought. Sometimes out of our disappointment short term, God is able to work real blessings long term, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've had a great, I want to tell you about Jamestown Presbyterian Church and what they've,
Yeah.
meant to my family. In the 70s, well, I already told you about Mac Faust and the example that my mom and dad had, but in 1974, we woke up on Labor Day weekend and my 8-year-old brother had died in his sleep. And we were in Burlington, North Carolina at the time, and we weren't in Jamestown. But when I think back on that time, and I think back on that time a lot, I can see my house and I can see just Jamestown Presbyterian people everywhere in that house, people taking over the kitchen to make sure all the food that was brought in was taken care of and that we were getting fed. And, I think about Jamestown Presbyterian all the time when I think about those moments. And they were always our church, even when we were in Burlington. And then my mom and dad discovered that, my uncle died of cancer, and a year later, his wife, my aunt, was killed in a car wreck within a year's period of time, right after my brother had died. Wow. And now they are the guardians of 2 children that my aunt and uncle had. And they were responsible for them. And all this stuff was just caving in on them. And I remember seeing my mom reading, when bad things happen to good people, and realizing that she was going through so much. But it was always Jamestown Presbyterian and the Mac Faust of the world that got us through there. And those are the kind of things I reflect on when I'm out there fishing and thinking about, and just how grateful I am for that church and what they meant to us. And I don't know where we would have been if we hadn't had them. And the good news is those 2 kids, my cousins, one went to Duke University and one went to LSU, and they both live in Texas. They both have families. They're raising 2 kids, and it all worked out in the end. And I just have to lean on those kind of stories within my family, because my family's amazing. I'm not amazing, but my family's amazing in the way that they've persevered through so many things. And again, when I'm fishing, those are the kind of things I think about.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have any favorite Bible verses or favorite hymns, anything like that?
Well, my favorite, I wrote one down. My favorite Bible verse is not necessarily a verse, but it's really the parable of the workers in the vineyard.
Oh yeah.
Chapter 20 in the Gospel of Matthew. And, it's sometimes I don't know if Christians buy into that or not, because, I don't think God's grace is like a green stamp program. I mean, you can receive it today, whether you've been worthy of it prior to all of this, you can still receive it. And I like that. And I guess I think a lot of people that have the courage to go do prison ministry, and I think about that story and how that story needs to be shared with prisoners or people who may just be so down on themselves that they think there's no hope for them. And I've just always cherished that story. And again, sometimes I'm not sure every Christian out there buys into it. They think that, well, you haven't done enough, so you're not going to receive God's grace. But bottom line is you can receive it at any time. And I think that's the greatest thing about, the greatest thing about God.
Yeah. Wow. That's a great one. a great one.
As far as my favorite hymn, it's kind of a funny one. Great is thy, not that the hymn is funny, but I'll tell you a funny story. Great is thy faithfulness is my favorite, but I sing it wrong sometimes. And I sing great is thy gratefulness. And my daughter has to point out that I'm singing it wrong. So we've already made a commitment that we're going to make sure that that is sung at my funeral, but it's going to be sung my way. It's going to be sung great is thy gratefulness.
That's neat. That is neat. Well, great is thy gratefulness is not a bad theme for maybe,
Yeah, I
maybe
mean,
there should be another hymn.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, maybe you'll find yourself in the Baptist hymnal one day. So what you've already told me a little bit about fishing, but what else do you do for fun? Like, what do you really when I think about when you think about having fun, what comes to mind? What do you really like to do?
Well, I was never really a beach person. My wife was, and it was always her thing. She wanted a place at the beach. Her dad always said he was, he wanted her to get a place at the beach, and I kind of gravitated to the beach with her, and I do enjoy the beach now more so than ever. I was more of a mountains person prior to meeting her. So we do have a little place down at Ocean Isle. And like I said, I discovered flounder fishing, but also discovered beach music and, discovered how to dance to beach music. Now, those that don't dance will say I'm a great dancer, and those that do dance will tell you that I'm a terrible dancer. So it just depends. And sometimes when I get through dancing with Luann, she says, we really need to take lessons, which is her nice way of telling me that I'm not a good dancer. So we really enjoy beach music. I love golf. I'm probably better at golf now than I was basketball. I probably flip-flop when I was younger, but I've aged out of the basketball thing. I used to coach girls basketball, and I really enjoyed that. That was something I really enjoyed a lot. I also I really have been one of the most important things I've ever been involved in is Big Brothers Big Sisters. And I've really cherished my two relationships that I've had there with DeMonte and with Caden. And they're still very, very much involved with me, even though they kind of graduated and they've aged up. DeMonte's, a father of two kids. He's talking about coming by and bringing the kids over here in a little while. And then Caden was a fatherless child whose mom did get remarried, and he's now living in Jacksonville, Florida. But for the time that we had together, we grew very close, and he still texts me and he still stays in touch with me, and we have a great relationship there. So those two things, those two guys have been really important in my life. And I guess I got the calling to do that because my dad was a fatherless child. His dad was a bigamist. When they found him out when dad was 2, they found out he had another family on the other side of town. And so he left my dad, and he didn't really offer a whole lot to support my dad and my grandmother. So my grandmother raised him. And I think that in itself motivated my dad to be the best dad he could possibly be for us. And I could see that throughout his life, no matter the fact that he traveled to Italy, Ireland, wherever. I think, I never felt like I was without a dad, regardless of all the traveling that he did. So that's what motivated me to get involved, to kind of carry his story forward and pay it forward to other kids who may not be as fortunate as I was to have a dad like that. So,
Todd, as you think about where you are now in your faith journey, do you have any ideas or any thoughts about where God might be inviting you to join him in his work going forward?
Well, I think he would like to continue to see me engaging with these at-risk kids through Big Brothers Big Sisters, because that is something I've been passionate about. Unfortunately, COVID kind of put that on hold. We couldn't really get involved, but I think my involvement at the church could step it up a little. I could step that up a little bit. Again, I'd ask that the church just pray for me to get past that issue that I shared with you earlier about being part of a committee and it taking away from my ability to focus on God. But yeah, and then just trying to decide what I want to do as I start looking at retirement and where I can serve the community as I have more time to serve the community. That would be very, very helpful too. I don't just have to limit myself to Big Brothers Big Sisters. There's obviously other things I can do. So I'm looking for some assistance there in that regard. Luann and I are actually going to a function tomorrow. That's a volunteer function that basically can place you in certain areas where you can volunteer in the community. And so I want to start looking at other things that I can do outside of that, because I'm going to have more and more time as Bedford starts to slow down here a little bit. I just turned 60. So, I don't foresee Bedford going on forever. It'll be, maybe 4 or 5 more years. And then I want to step back and start focusing on other things. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a fascinating story you've shared. Is there anything else that maybe you've thought about in preparation for this that you want to talk about that I haven't asked you about? That
Yeah, and I
we've
hope I
got?
haven't gone all over the map with you there.
Oh, that's okay. No, it's been
Yeah,
very interesting.
yeah, you're talking about one of the things that you're asking me what I love to do. And the Atlanta Braves baseball team is very, very important to me because it's very, very important to my mom. Mom and my brother and I, we text each other every night during an Atlanta Braves game. And that's the fact that they won the World Series last year was kind of funny because I turned 60 and I made a bucket list of things I want to do or see when now that I'm 60 and before I leave this earth. And one of the things was I want to see the Atlanta Braves win the World Series. Well, I didn't know he was going to do it last year. I thought maybe I'd have
Right.
time, but the other thing is I want to take my mom to the Masters golf tournament. And lo and behold, a friend of mine called me up a few weeks ago and said he had Sunday tickets. So mom's knee is not real good. I don't know if she can walk the course, but I'm looking forward to taking her in a wheelchair if I have to and rolling her out there on hole number 18. That's all she says. She just give me the hole 18. I think it would do wonders for my mom's spirits right now because with COVID, knee replacement last year, I mean, she's been so confined that her spirit is just broken right now. And I really hope that, with things changing now and COVID hopefully getting behind us, that I can start seeing her smile again.
Yeah. Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So you're going to be going to the Masters like what, next month?
April 10th. Yep. I'll be
Wow.
going on Sunday. Yep. It'll be my
Very
5th
good.
time going, but it's a very hilly golf course. You can't really tell how hilly it is on TV. So I'm not going to be walking her all over the golf course in a wheelchair, but just getting her there would be huge. She was a big golfer, very good golfer.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
been one of the things that she really wanted to do. So I just can't say enough about God blessing me with this opportunity here. And Mom and I have gotten really emotional talking about it, to be honest with you. So.
Anything else, Todd, that I should ask you about that I haven't asked you about before we wrap up?
No, I just, made some notes and, like I said, I just really appreciate what you're doing here. I'm big into small group ministries when you have a large church like this or anything that can help us get connected to other people. So I look forward to learning about the other guests that you have down the road. And I'm very flattered that y'all would pick me to be a guest today.
Well, we appreciate everything you do. What I always like to ask as my last question is people listening to this, um, myself included, what is it that we can pray for you?
For me, uh, as I'm doing well, but I still have this mindset from the first day that I started Bedford Financial, where I'm just worrying about things all the time. When you're first starting out a company, yeah, you're worried about things a lot, and it's like I got into a bad habit,
Mhm.
and I haven't stopped to remind myself that the Lord has taken care of me for 20 years here, this company, and I'm still worrying so much about things that I just need to stop and smell the roses and thank God for getting me to this point, and that I'm going to be fine, and I really am. But it's weird how you get trapped in that kind of mindset, and I need to get out of it. And I'd say that would help me a lot, especially as I look towards winding down and hopefully enjoying some retirement here.
Yeah. Well, we certainly will. And thanks for that honest answer there. It's just refreshing to hear people. When we ask that question, it's always interesting to hear people's responses, and there's a lot of people who can relate to your request, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
So, well, Todd, listen, thanks so much for being willing to share a little bit about your faith journey. It's been quite a journey,
Hmm.
and it's been interesting to learn about the different things that been key milestones along the way. And we're so very fortunate to have you at Wake Forest Baptist Church, and the way you use your gifts, particularly in the areas like we've talked about, teaching, devotions. You're very gifted in those areas. Thanks for your willingness to share those gifts with us, and we'll be praying for you and Luann and for God to continue to do good works in your life.
All right. Thank you, Joe. And thank you, Wake Forest Baptist. Thank you.